I'm Margo Adams Larson, Inspiration Entrepreneur. Welcome to the Inspired Hive podcast, where we're creating a community of business and leadership professionals through meaningful conversations designed to inspire one another. Quyen Stevenson is a full-time wound and ostomy nurse practitioner at the Seattle VA Hospital. She is the founder and current facilitator of the Greater East Side Ostomy Support Group. In addition, she's also a consultant for Levy Regenerative Healing, which is an organization that is creating and growing the only wound care team in the region that offers the combined expertise of a board-certified dermatologist and wound-certified nurse practitioner. Quyen is in the trenches of medical services for some of our nation's most incredible service members and veterans, and she's been doing this for over 16 years. When I met Quyen this summer, I had no idea of all the different amazing professional experiences that she's navigated. But her bubbly personality and energy just bounded out of her small frame like a giant hug, and we were fast friends. After learning about the work that she does day in and day out, I would absolutely want Quyen to be on my medical team. Well, I have with me today Quyen Stevenson. I realized you have so much inspiration and leadership to share with our community, and I'm just absolutely thrilled that you agreed to join us for an episode of the Inspired Hive podcast, and I just am delighted to welcome you on.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I actually thought you might change your mind after you read my bio.
No, you know what? I was like, after learning all that you do and still having such a spirited, energized personality, you've got some magic in there that I think there's a lot of nuggets to share with folks. And we're all journeying something. And so I just thought it would be a really intriguing conversation between the two of us here. So I'm so glad you agreed to be here.
Well, thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, I would love to know where your story begins.
I always joke and say I wanted to be a nurse since I was a zygote, maybe, or an embryo. But actually, it was in my early teens, my freshman year of high school. My cross country coach, I was also the my language arts teacher in my freshman year, and his wife was a nurse, and she is the first nurse I ever met, and she was the nicest person on the planet at the time. And I said, I want to do what she does. And that's where my passion has stemmed from.
It's so interesting to hear your description of this too, in that you've cultivated a lot of positivity with, you've culled the memories you don't want to continue with, but to just think about like the energy of that, the coach's wife and who
Right.
was the nurse, and how that has maybe kind of been a part of that journey for you of finding that kind of path that leads through that light, and that energy is very cool.
Right. And I had the second nurse I ever met was two gals who ran cross country who were the nicest people on planet, I'm still in friends with, very close.
Oh,
Their
wow.
mother was a veteran, and the second nurse I met, and she actually worked and retired at the VA. And I got to work with her the first day I was there at the VA. After 20 years of admiring the women, we got to work together. And I actually got to
Oh,
be there on the day she retired. And
that's awesome.
yeah, that has to be one of the coolest things that have ever happened in my life by being a nurse. So, yeah.
It's like the cycle, the career cycle. You get to
Right,
see both sides, which is so cool.
right.
How is it that you landed in the work of wound care and ostomy care? Because this is, not the everyday things that you think of in nursing, or in doctoring.
Right.
How did that come to be?
Well, I think I listened to your first podcast. Was it Dr. Martin? Was that the
She was
psychologist?
one of them.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
that was probably the most powerful one that I think I've listened to of yours, and I've listened to it actually quite a few times now since I first discovered it. And one of the things I remember her talking about specifically was when she was looking for an internship, and there was one particular one she wanted. And so that's where my life is. I could not get into, I wasn't the best student, but I could not get into any nursing program in west of probably the Mississippi or west of New York. And I could not get into any program to save my life. And I just decided to go ahead and just complete my degree. I got a bachelor's of science and exercise science, just to finish when all my friends were finishing. And then at the time, there was a program in New York that if at Pace University, that if you had all your sciences, you could get into their accelerated nursing program. And they were all on the East Coast. There was one at Yale, one at University of Southern Maine, and one at Pace, and I got into the Pace one in New York. But if I hadn't got into that program, I would have never got my first job as a dermatology nurse. And then when I went back to Seattle in 2000 after graduating, I just stayed with wound care. My mentor said, if you love derm, you'll love wound care. And that's pretty much what I've been doing since 1999.
Wow. So it kind of picked you in a way.
Yeah. Yeah. But people talk about if I'm sorry, it took you 7 years to get your nursing degree, or I'm sorry you had to go through all these hoops. But honestly, when I look back, I look at every single what people would call setbacks. As actually at the time, you think it's the worst thing that can happen. When I keep thinking, does God not want me to be a nurse? But then now I look back and I think those were the greatest things that had ever happened to me. Um, Taking my time to get into school and finally finding one school that gave me a chance and meeting this dermatologist, and look where I'm at now. And I just honestly could not um, give credit to anything in my life happening without those setbacks. They all led to this life where I'm at now. So,
Oh, that is such a powerful message,
yeah.
because I think so many of us feel in the times of struggle and stuck and challenge that it's almost as though we're doing what we're not meant to do, yet
Right.
that ends up being the important glue to that trajectory forward and the things that really do become that quilt of our career and our path forward. That's
Yeah,
so
and it led
powerful.
to a mantra or a self motto that I've had for decades, which is it all has its purpose.
Yeah.
It really does. And I call them life speed bumps. And it doesn't matter. It might be 5 years, 20 years. And I taught these to my kids. It might be 30 years down the road, but it's always led to something amazing and positive. So I just don't fight that stuff anymore.
And that's such an interesting perspective too of, being able to see challenge as growth points or
Right.
positive things, even though at the time it sometimes feels not that way. And that it really can be something that, we don't know. We don't know kind of the master plan, however we think of
Right.
that. But oftentimes, I think those challenges come along and um, we try to resist that instead of leaning in and really kind of finding the lessons or the growth in them.
Right. Right.
Quinn, what inspires you?
I used to be inspired by famous people.
Mm,
Because back in the day when you didn't have media everywhere and didn't have cell phone and internet, when you did pick up a magazine at the grocery store and see a
right?
famous person, or there wasn't like massive streaming shows, there were just one show that you watched every week for 25 minutes. And then those were all you knew about. But now, as I've gotten older, I don't know what it is, but watching like any act of like human kindness,
Mm.
especially towards strangers, and for some reason, especially towards animals, those two things have been my passion. Um, and honestly, I think the pandemic changed everything. I think I was
Mhm.
always a nice person, and I think I was always a kind provider and a friend. But because of the work I do, I had asked a few years ago to have a full length mirror attached to the back of my exam room door. And I never open my eyes when I hug people. For some reason, I feel like when you close your eyes, it takes away all the other senses other than touch. And so it
Mhm.
makes it more powerful to both parties. Anyways, long story short is during the pandemic towards the end, and I have a huge homeless population. I had hugged one of my patients on the way out. I had opened my eyes and he was crying
Oh.
during the hug and big tears. And I decided at that moment, you never really know how something little, how powerful it is for another person. Um, and that moment changed everything for me. So
Yeah.
I don't force hugs, but I never fight them, and I always offer them now to all my patients. And
Mhm.
he had said to me the reason he was crying was because it was the first time somebody had actually touched him and hugged him. Probably he said over 2 years. So
Wow.
yeah,
It is so powerful, and touch is so important,
it
and I
is.
think it's one of those things that we've really lost connection
Yeah,
with,
I agree.
as humans, in
Right,
the past probably 5 years that,
right,
everything like you mentioned, it used to be we would have to wait for a week till that show came back on, right? And we could
right,
have conversations with people about what's gonna happen, but now we just binge and no don't even think about it or even have a conversation about it. And,
right,
that connection of conversation and connection of touch is so vital to our sustenance as humans. And
right.
what a powerful experience to be able to hear that from a patient.
And the whole idea that it's so simple and free,
Yeah,
doesn't cost a thing,
yeah.
and I hope we're all capable of it. So yeah,
Yeah,
that
and
changed
what
everything.
and so powerful from the receiver side too, right?
Exactly,
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
yeah,
I have this quote, people always say, "Quinn," my patients always say these wonderful, kind things, and there's, I think I'm a quote person,
I
but
do.
there's a quote along the lines of, and I kind of printed it out, kind of guessed I might read it to you. But this is, if I could say one thing back to my patients, I printed just this one quote for today. If I could say something back to my patients, it says, if I could give you only one thing in this life, I would actually give you the ability to see yourself through my eyes.
Mm,
And only then would you actually realize how special you actually are. Because they don't realize what they do for me is just as powerful as what I do for them. And I don't think we tell people that enough, especially when we're in a role where I hate to use the word more powerful or influential, but that's what we are. They come to us because they need something from us.
yeah.
But yeah, I think it's important for them to know, and I wish I could read that to every single one of my patients. But yeah,
You really embody a spirit to me of someone who is very connected with people and your patients and those you serve. And I think a lot of folks in medicine there's been a big disconnect for so many. So I think, you know, it's perhaps a new thing for some of your patients, but a very refreshing thing because it's
right,
very hard to find.
right,
And it makes healing better.
right,
It makes the process easier. It makes hard things easier and there's a lot of hard things your patients are going to be going through or having gone through or
mm,
facing
right,
that having someone who can connect at that level with them, I think is just so precious.
right.
One of the questions I typically ask is who you follow for inspiration, but I'd like to ask you kind of where your inspiration comes from.
Most recently, and I hate to narrow it down to women, and not just women, but what I consider successful women. And I love the word success because it's so subjective,
Hmm.
right? So everyone I admire and look up to, that's my version of success. And not just recently, but over the last few years, there is something about, I think women's lives just start out a little harder. And for some reason in medicine, I also feel it starts out harder, especially with doctors, female doctors. I think back actually even probably up till the 90s, I think it was like a 60% of med students were men and 40% of women. And then now it's changed actually. And I believe the most recent statistic this year is I think 60% women and 40% men. But I watch women, and not just to focus on physicians, but really women in high uh, influential positions, I call them counselors, therapists, researchers, pastors, coaches, teachers. I mean, physicians is, I just know they've worked so hard to get there. And I
Hmm.
know the obstacles that they have all been there. And then when you see them interact with people, um, and how they care for patients and how they treat their colleagues and coworkers, it's actually the most beautiful thing. And honestly, one of my favorite doctors, how we met was I had passed her hallway and I kept hearing how she talks to her patients. And I
Mm.
just had to interrupt. She had nothing to do with me. I had nothing to do with her, but I decided to knock on her door and say, I just want to introduce myself, Dr. Wells. You have to be the nicest doctor I think I've ever met. And she was new. And I said to her, promise me one thing that you will never change. Because I know medicine changes people. But honestly, there's something about a powerful, successful woman who has the kindest heart and how she treats people, especially
Mm.
people who are coming to her because they're in a different position, they need them. But yeah, I've now have this list of who I consider the most beautiful women and powerful women I look up to. And the best part, none of them are famous.
Mm.
You might be the most famous person I know. You're the only one I know
I am
who has
for
a
sure not
podcast.
famous.
My gosh, you're the only one who has a podcast. So, but yeah, but anyways, like you, and so yeah, so and I love that my list of women who I admire, they all like are just really good, kind people. And yeah, those that's my inspiration now, and that's who I look up to.
I love that. And it really circles back to that connection that you have with people, that they're people you're connected with that
Yeah,
are kind of fueling that inspiration that you have to do the work you do and also
right.
the way you inspire people too, which I think it's kind of a full circle, which is really cool.
Yeah.
I am curious what your biggest lesson that you've been blessed with is.
Oh boy, just one. How long is this show? How long is this recording? That's a big one.
Yeah.
Just one? No.
Just one. Yeah.
Okay.
Pick one.
Honestly, I think it is now I've noticed that I don't do anything alone, and I don't think I've ever gotten anywhere alone. And
Uh-huh.
now I realize when people used to say, thank you, Quinn, for this, or thank you, I used to say, oh, you're welcome. I'm happy to do it. But now, you know what I say is, I couldn't have done it without you. So if a patient says, thank you so much for the care you gave, or a physician says, thank you for taking care of my patient, I always say, well, thank yourself, because if it wasn't for you advocating for your patient and reaching out to me, it's all for full circle. And I
Hmm.
realized I actually do not do anything alone. I don't take credit for anything anymore alone as much as I used to love doing that. And yeah, I just realized my biggest lesson now is when you look at everything you do as part of a team, whether it's your counselor, who I love, mine, who is the one that, keeping me sane and calm, or it's the great colleagues that I get to work for, or if it's just the mission of taking care of the VA at a VA facility. But I realize, yeah, I don't do anything alone anymore. And when you have that mindset, um,
Yeah.
you realize the power of everyone around you, that literally everyone serves a role, um, whether good or
Mm.
bad, right?
Well, and it's super powerful to think about how far we can go. There's
Right,
not very far we can go by ourselves, but when we have
right,
a team, there's just so much more we can do.
right.
And we all have a little bit of expertise maybe to bring to that or a different perspective to bring to that. But what a powerful lesson of realizing that it is a co-created accomplishment, so to speak, in terms of whatever the thank you is for. And
Right.
I can see that reflecting back as well in terms of just the gratitude you have with all of the patients that you're serving and working with as well. That's super powerful. I'm wondering if there's anything that you want to brag on yourself a little bit in terms of things you have going on or new things on the horizon for you.
Honestly, I think one of the coolest projects I'm working on right now, which actually very few people know about, you know, I'm actually working on a book, and it's
Wow.
actually for myself. And
Okay.
I realized that everything I've ever done, all the talks I've done, all the um, Zoom meetings or guest lecturing and everything, and all the support group, everything I've done has always been quote unquote for someone else, or
Hmm.
somebody has asked me to do it, or it was an assignment. I just realized recently the power of friendship and words. And for the first time, I'm not looking at inspiration for how my day goes or if I'm in a bad mood or I need some inspiration. I don't actually look at quotes anymore, which I used to Google. But
Mhm.
now I actually have been screenshotting and saving a bunch of texts from some of my favorite people. I've kept every letter and every card from every patient, every colleague, every student, every supervisor, and I've scanned every single one of them in. And
Wow.
I've also started creating a file with quotes from friends and colleagues and texts and emails. And I have enough to fill 365 days.
Holy cow.
And I don't know if you remember those old fashioned flip calendars that have, I was
Yes.
so obsessed with those. Was it the Gary Larson or I used to
Yes.
love, yeah. But I'm actually going to do a book for myself.
Oh my gosh.
And the best part, you're not going to be able to Google any of these quotes because they all came from a letter or a card. And
Meaningful for you.
yeah, and some of them will actually have a full screenshot of what the actual handwriting, because I think we've missed handwriting letters.
Oh,
And
yes.
yeah, so I've actually decided on the legible ones. But yeah, I've actually scanned them all in and scanned photos of people to attach to those letters and notes. And I'm planning on filling a whole book with it.
I love this. It's like
Yeah,
the yearbook of Quinn.
yeah, yeah. I just have to come up with a title. Um,
So powerful
yeah,
though for the things that really have been that meaningfulness of kind of fueling you and the things you've gathered along the way. I just love that.
yeah. So that's what I'm working on right now. So don't be shocked. You might be in there. We've exchanged quite a bit of text since we've met.
We
Yeah,
have. We have.
yeah.
Well, as we're wrapping up, I am curious if you have a piece of advice or maybe something that someone shared with you that you treasured that you would like to share out to the listeners.
So I actually this I will have to look this one up. I actually I didn't do too much research because I really didn't know how this was going to go. But I kind of guess you might ask that one specific question. So I've actually been studying Buddhism recently.
Oh my goodness.
I've gone to church my whole life. I grew up as Catholic. I've been to every Christian church possible. Our pastor just retired of our church after 18, 17 years. So I'm kind of exploring other churches. But anyway, so I've been discovering Buddhism, and there is a quote that I just saw, I don't know, about 6 months ago, but I've kept it. And because I have 6,000 photos on my phone, I can't scroll easily. So when I see it, I screenshot it so it could save as today. But
Awesome.
it says, and it's specifically titled Buddha, but it says, in the end, only three things matter. One, how much you loved. Two, how gently you lived, which is something I've never done. And three, how gracefully you've actually let go of things that are actually not meant for you.
Mm.
And it's so powerful. That's such a universal um, advice. I think that probably the best thing I can leave this show with or this
Oh, I
podcast
love
with.
that.
So
I love that so much. It wraps into even your work with patients of,
yeah,
the power of that connection and the power of things that we don't need to carry and
right,
letting them be and
right,
letting someone else maybe carry it for a while in terms of
right.
care or community. So, wow, that is awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much for being here. I always end the episode with a quote, and knowing how many quotes you've already sent me, but how you love quotes, I was like, I have to find a really good one. And when you listen to the podcast, I always pick them ahead of time, and I don't know what we're talking about
Right.
necessarily. So here's our quote. Today it's from Lori Nelson Spielman. Remember to spread your sunshine. Never underestimate the importance of your light to someone living in a bank of clouds.
Wow.
And I don't look very long, but it jumped out at me, and it surely highlights just the things we've talked about today in terms of the sunshine that you share with your patients and your family and your friends, and that positivity that you shine out for everyone, and how powerful it is. I think that when we do this in our day, we don't always recognize the impact that it has or who we're
Right.
inspiring with that.
Right.
And
Right.
there is just so many. You're working on a book, but there's so many that aren't even going to be in the book because they haven't
Right.
told you.
Right.
But I'm here to say that you've shone your light and spread that sunshine for them. And I thank you so, so very much for doing that for us too today. I'm so glad you joined me for this episode of the Inspired Hive podcast. Be sure to stay connected by following us on social media at Inspired Hive Podcast and subscribe to stay updated on all our upcoming episodes. I'll catch you next time. Until then, live inspired.